40,000 years ago, southern France, Chauvet Cave. The darkness here is absolute. Not the kind of darkness that exists outside at night. Outside, there is always something. Stars, the moon, light on the horizon. Your eyes adjust and begin to distinguish shapes. Here there is nothing. The cave runs into the mountain for several hundred meters. The entrance is behind, far behind, and no light from it reaches here. This is darkness with no information in it. Darkness that presses down. Darkness that does something to consciousness, not at once, but gradually. After a few minutes inside it, you begin to lose the sense of your own boundaries. You begin not to understand where you end and where the darkness begins. The torch burns, small, a branch with animal fat and moss wrapped around the end. The radius of light is about 3 meters. Beyond it, darkness immediately, with no transition. A human being walks deeper into the cave. Why? That is the first question. Why go so far into darkness? Why go deeper into a place where there is no food, no water, no shelter? A place where daylight never reaches, and where there was no practical reason to be. Anthropologists argue about this. One version is ritual. The cave is a special space, separated from the world of the living. A place where one can speak with what lies beyond the visible. A place where the wall between worlds is thin. Another version is altered states. Darkness, isolation, the monotonous sound of dripping water, limited oxygen in the deeper chambers. All of this can trigger hallucinations. Visions. States that were experienced as contact with another reality. A third version is simpler. Because he could. Because there was curiosity. Because a dark, deep cave attracted him in the same way the horizon attracts. There is something there, it must be seen. Perhaps all three at once. Perhaps something else we cannot imagine. But the human being keeps going. The wall. At some point, a wall. Not a dead end, not the end. Simply a large flat surface of stone. Limestone, pale, slightly damp with condensation. In the light of the torch, it seems alive. It moves when the flame trembles. The human being stops, looks at the wall. For a long time. What does he see in it? What happens in his brain when he looks at this surface in flickering light? Here's what we know about the brain and pattern recognition. The human brain is one of the most aggressive pattern detectors in nature. It searches for meaning, forms, faces, movement, even where none exist. This is called pareidolia, the phenomenon in which we see a face in a cloud, a figure in cracks on a ceiling, an image in random stains. This is not an error. It is an adaptation. In a world where a predator may be hiding in the bushes, it is better to see a predator where there is none than to fail to see one where it is. The cost of a false alarm is small. The cost of a miss is death. So evolution calibrated the detector toward hypersensitivity. In the flickering light of a torch, the wall lives. In the uneven surface of the stone, forms begin to appear. A protrusion here is a shoulder. A hollow there is an eye. A crack along the surface is the back of an animal. The brain sees animals in the stone, and then the hand takes charcoal. The first line, a piece of burned bone or wood, charcoal, or ochre, red pigment, iron oxide, which easily leaves a mark on damp limestone. The first line, not long, a few centimeters. Following the natural protrusion of the stone, the same protrusion that in the torchlight seemed like the shoulder of an animal. The stone suggested it, the hand agreed. This is not a human drew an animal. This is a human found an animal that was already in the stone and helped it come out. Some artists much later described their own work in exactly this way. Michelangelo said that the sculptor only removes what is unnecessary, revealing what is already inside the marble. This is not a metaphor about artistic humility. It is a description of how the creative process feels from the inside. The first drawing was a collaboration with the stone, Chauvet. Chauvet Cave was discovered in 1994 by Jean-Marie Chauvet and his colleagues in the Ardèche Valley in southern France. Its length is about 500 meters. Several chambers, and on the walls, drawings. About 400 images of animals. Mammoths, rhinoceroses, cave lions, bison, horses, bears, owls, panthers, rhinoceroses with lowered heads, as if they are about to strike with their horns. Horses in motion, several horses drawn overlapping one another, creating the effect of a moving group, rhinoceroses fighting. These are not naive scribbles. This is art, real, complex, deliberate art. The use of perspective, distant animals drawn smaller. The use of volume, lines following the protrusions of the stone to create three-dimensionality. The use of dynamism, the poses of the animals rendered with a true understanding of movement. And the dating, around 36,000 years ago. Some of the oldest known cave paintings. 36,000 years before us, a human being stood here and drew a rhinoceros with such understanding of its form and movement that any artist of the 21st century would recognize it as masterful. Why animals? Almost all early cave art is animals. Not landscapes, not plants, not abstractions, or almost none. Animals. This is not accidental. Animals occupied the center of these people's lives. They were food. They were danger. They were the object of hunting, observation, understanding. Knowledge of animals. Knowledge of how they move, how they react, where to find them, how they smell, how they behave in different seasons. This was knowledge of survival. A hunting human being knows animals differently from us. We know animals from documentaries, from zoos, from books. We know facts about them. We know what they are called and where they live. A hunter knows their body, knows how it moves in every moment, knows how its silhouette changes in different poses, knows the expression of the face before attack and before flight, knows the sounds made in different situations, knows the track, what the print of different animals looks like, how the track changes depending on speed and direction. This is knowledge through the body and through years of observation. Knowledge that cannot be transferred through words alone, only through experience. And that knowledge poured itself onto the walls. A drawing of an animal is not just an image, it is a concentration of everything known about that animal. Every line contains thousands of hours of observation. Hands. In the caves of the world, there are thousands of handprints. Stencil negatives, when the hand was placed against the wall and pigment was blown around it. What remained was the silhouette of a hand, a white or red form against the background. This is the most direct thing in cave art. Animals are images, symbols, something represented. A handprint is the hand itself. It is the trace of physical presence. It is I was here. I was here. These are the three words standing behind every handprint on a cave wall. 36,000 years have passed, and the hand is still there. Not the human being, the hand, the outline, the form, but the form of that specific hand, not of an abstraction, not of a symbol, but of this hand, which belonged to a specific person who lived, who hunted, who came into this darkness and placed a palm against the stone and blew pigment. This is direct contact across time. No other animal leaves intentional traces of its presence, only the human being. Only the human being wants something to remain after death. What drawing does. But why? What happens when you draw? The neurobiology of drawing is well studied. Drawing activates an unusual combination of systems: the visual cortex, the motor cortex, spatial processing, emotional centers, the reward system. This is integration. Drawing is the translation of an inner image into an outer one. It is the materialization of something that existed in the mind. It is the creation of an object that exists outside you and can be seen, touched, shown to another. And that moment, when the inner image becomes external, is something special. The inner image exists only for you. It is in your brain, subjective, inaccessible to others. The external drawing exists for everyone. It is in the world. It will outlive you. This is the first step toward making the subjective objective. The first attempt to say, this is what is inside me. This is what I see. This is what I know. This is mine. And that is a fundamental shift. Before drawing, the subjective world of the human being was completely closed. One could speak about it, but words vanished. One could gesture, but gestures vanished. Only a drawing remained. Only a drawing allowed one to say, "Look, this is what I see. This is what it looks like to me." A conversation through the wall. And here the most important thing begins. A drawing in a cave is not only for oneself, or rather, perhaps at first, it was for oneself. Perhaps the first drawing was made in solitude, in darkness, with no witnesses, simply because the hand reached toward the stone. But then someone else came here and saw the drawing, and that changed everything. Because a drawing is a message, it is communication. It is one human being saying something to another human being through an image. And the most astonishing thing about it is that they may never meet. One may be dead when the other sees the drawing. A drawing is the first message through time, the first conversation between people who will never meet. The first time information and meaning exist independently of the bearer, not in a human mind, not in a human voice, but in an object, in a drawing on a wall. This is the beginning of everything we call the recording of knowledge, the beginning, in the end, of writing, the beginning of books, the beginning of the internet. All of these are different forms of the same thing. A human being wants to say something to another human being whom he does not know and will never meet, through an object that will outlive them both. Technique. Let us look at how this is done, literally. Ochre, red pigment, manganese, black. Both were ground down, mixed with water or animal fat, applied with a finger, with a brush made of fur or plants, or blown through a tube, a hollow bone. Tubes for blowing pigment have been found. These are tools, specialized tools for applying paint. Not accidental devices, but intentionally made instruments for a specific task. That means foresight. Someone thought about making a drawing before entering the cave, took tools along, prepared. This is planning a creative act. This is an artist going to the studio with materials. And there is more: scaffolding. In Lascaux Cave in France, traces of wooden structures were found, which researchers believe may have been scaffolds. Because some of the paintings are high on the walls, beyond reach without support. Scaffolding for painting cave walls. This is the construction of an auxiliary structure, for the sake of an act of representation. This is a degree of intention and planning that no longer fits inside the word primitive. Light and shadow. In Chauvet Cave, and in others, the drawings are positioned so that moving torchlight creates the illusion of motion. This is not accidental. The artist knew. Saw how the image changed when the fire flickered. Saw how the rhinoceros began to move its head. How the horse's legs seemed to step, and took it into account. Placed the lines so that the movement of the fire created movement in the image. This is the first animation. The first use of light as part of the artistic medium. The first understanding that a drawing is not only pigment on stone. It is pigment on stone plus a light source, plus the angle of view, plus movement. This is high-order spatial thinking, the ability to hold several variables in mind at once and predict how they will interact. This is the same kind of thinking that creates theater, cinema, architecture, aloneness in the dark. Let us return to the human being in the cave. He is alone. Or almost alone, perhaps someone is holding a second torch. Darkness all around. Silence, not complete, dripping water can be heard, one's own breathing can be heard. Sometimes an echo whose origin is unclear. In such conditions, the brain begins to work differently. Sensory deprivation, the absence of external stimuli, changes the operating mode of the brain. Internal activity becomes stronger. Images from memory become brighter. Hallucinations appear, light or more intense depending on the degree of deprivation and individual features. Some researchers, in particular also David Lewis Williams, propose that many cave paintings depict hallucinatory images, images seen by the artist in an altered state of consciousness, caused by darkness, rhythmic monotony, hyperventilation, or psychoactive plants used in ritual contexts. This explanation is disputed, but there is a real insight inside it. The cave as a place creates a particular mental state, a special experience. An experience that cannot be obtained outside, in the open air, in everyday life. The cave is another world, literally another one in the physical sense. Different temperature, different sound, different air, different light. And psychologically another one, a place one enters by leaving the ordinary behind, a place where normal reference points no longer work. Perhaps that is why they painted here and not on the rocks outside. Not because painting outside was impossible, but because the cave was a special place requiring a special act. A place one entered not for food and not for safety, but for something else. Beauty. Let us speak about beauty. Not aesthetics in the philosophical sense, but a concrete experience. What happens when one looks at something beautiful? Neuroscience gives an answer. The medial orbitofrontal cortex becomes active, a region associated with reward and valuation. The reward system is activated. Dopamine is released. Beauty is neurochemically pleasant. It is a reward. But why? Why should the brain reward the perception of beauty? Part of the answer is functional. Beauty often correlates with what is useful. A beautiful fruit is ripe and sweet. A beautiful body is healthy and fertile. A beautiful landscape with water and trees is suitable for life. But that does not explain everything, because the beauty of a drawing is functionally useless. A drawing of a rhinoceros on a cave wall gives no immediate biological advantage. And yet, it is beautiful. It still triggers a reward response, perhaps because beauty is a signal of skill. A beautiful drawing requires ability, time, understanding. It is a display of cognitive resources. It is evidence that the one who made it is intelligent, attentive, capable. And these qualities are attractive in a mate, in an ally, in a member of the group. Beauty as a signal of quality. This explanation is also incomplete, but it points to something important. The experience of beauty is not a random ornament added on top of biology. It has a function. It is evolutionarily meaningful. And 40,000 years ago, it was already there, already working. A human being looks at the drawing he has made and feels something. Something good. Something close to right. This is the first aesthetic experience we know through physical evidence. The beast in the stone, the cave lion. One of the most astonishing drawings in Chauvet is a group of cave lions. They are shown in motion, several heads in the foreground, bodies going into depth, perspective. One lion is clearly looking aside, and the turn of the head is rendered precisely with an understanding of anatomy. The cave lion was real. It lived in Europe at that time. Larger than the modern lion. One of the major predators. The human being who drew these lions had seen them. Perhaps hunted near them or fled from them. Perhaps lost someone from the group in an encounter with them. Perhaps watched them from a distance for years with wary admiration. And that admiration poured itself onto the wall. Not only fear, admiration. This is the second level of response to danger. The first level is fear and avoidance. The second is fear and admiration at the same time. Fear that does not cancel the beauty of the feared object, but seems to intensify it. The sublime, that is what aesthetics calls it. The experience that arises before something huge, powerful, capable of destroying you, and at the same time beautiful. A storm, the ocean, a mountain peak, a predator. The sublime is the reaction of a small consciousness to something larger than itself. A reaction that includes fear and awe and the sense of one's own smallness, all at once. That artist already felt this. Already knew that the lion was not only a threat, that there was something in it that drew the eye, something that had to be captured. Who painted? For a long time it was assumed that cave art was created by men, hunters, shamans. But in 2013, the anthropologist Dean Snow of Pennsylvania State University published a study in which he analyzed the proportions of hands in stencil prints from several caves. The ratio of finger lengths is a reasonably reliable marker of sex, and the result was surprising. Most stencil handprints were female. This overturned the stereotype. If women created most of the handprints, then they were in the caves. They participated in the making of the images. Perhaps they made them themselves. This is not a sensation. It is a correction of our assumptions. We assumed we knew who painted. We did not know. Perhaps everyone painted. Perhaps it was a collective practice. Perhaps some were more skillful, more specialized. Perhaps it was the role of certain people in the group. We do not know, but the hands are there. Concrete, different sizes. Some with missing fingers, ritual amputation or injury. Some are children's hands, small. Children were here too. They too placed their hands on the wall. They too left a trace. Beasts that no longer exist. The cave lion is extinct, about 14,000 years ago. The woolly rhinoceros is extinct, about 10,000 years ago. The mammoth is extinct, about 4,000 years ago on the mainland, and on Wrangel Island somewhat later. The cave bear is extinct, about 24,000 years ago. All the principal figures of cave art have disappeared. They no longer exist in the world. No living person will ever see them, only in bones, in reconstructions, in descriptions. But on the cave walls they are still there. That is why the drawings in Chauvet are not only monuments of art. They are documents. They are eyewitness testimony. A human being who saw a cave lion alive is drawing it, passing on to us the exact silhouette, the exact movement, the exact expression of the face of a creature we will never see. This is an extraordinary value, and it is an accident that the cave survived, that the entrance was blocked and sealed early enough, that the temperature and humidity inside remained stable, that there were no tourists whose breath would destroy the microclimate, as happened in Lascaux, where, after the opening in 1940 and the flood of visitors, the paintings began to deteriorate from mold, and the cave had to be closed. Most drawings did not survive. Most caves have not been found. Somewhere in the mountains of Europe, Asia, Africa, in sealed and unnoticed caves, there may be drawings 50,000, 100,000 years old, which we will never see. This too is part of the truth. A line through time. From Chauvet Cave there is a direct line to this text. Not a metaphorical one, a literal one. A human being in the cave held an image in his mind, translated it into external form. That form outlived him. Another human being saw it, many years later, many generations later, or 36,000 years later. It does not matter. The principle is the same. The image was transmitted. This is the basis of everything we call culture, everything we call civilization, everything we call knowledge. Information stored outside a single body. Information that survives the death of its bearer. Information available to the one who seeks it. A drawing on stone, cuneiform on a clay tablet, a manuscript on papyrus, a printed book, a digital text. Different media, the same principle. I want to say something to someone I do not know and will never meet, through an object that will outlive us both. That is 40,000 years old. And we owe everything to it. Return. The human being comes out of the cave. The light outside cuts. After the darkness of the cave, even a cloudy day seems blinding. The pupils narrow. For a few seconds, almost nothing can be seen. Then the eyes adjust. Forest. The valley below. The river shining. The sky. The smell outside. Living, complex, layered. After the smell of stone and pigment. He has come out of another world. And he carries something out with him. Not material. Not in his hands. Something in what happened there. In that darkness. With that stone and that charcoal. What exactly he could not explain. There are no words for it yet. But something is there. Something changed or was confirmed or was given form. That is what will later be called art. Not as beautiful objects hung on museum walls, but as what it does to a human being. What happens inside when one creates or perceives it? The change that cannot be explained and yet is real. What he had, we have too. 36,000 years and the same experience. That is why we still draw. Sing, write poems, make films, tell stories. Do something that is not necessary for survival, but without which something important in us dies. This is not decoration added to life. It is part of what makes life life. Chauvet Cave was discovered in December 1994 by Jean-Marie Chauvet, Eliette Brunel Deschamps, and Christian Hilaire. The entrance had been sealed by a rockfall about 30,000 years ago, which preserved the contents almost in their original condition. The drawings were dated by radiocarbon analysis of charcoal from the images. The oldest are about 36,000 years old. Some are slightly younger, around 30,000 years old. Two phases of cave use. Not only the drawings survived, traces of torches on the ceiling, cave bear bones, paw prints of cave bears and a wolf, and a human footprint, a child's. A child around 8 to 10 years old walked through this cave. The analysis of stencil handprints in different caves. Dean Snow, 2013, a publication in a National Geographic. The conclusion that female hands predominate has been reproduced by several other research groups, although the methodology and conclusions remain under discussion. The cave is closed. An exact facsimile was created, a Caverne du Pont d'Arc, opened in 2015 nearby. Every crack, every protrusion, every drawing was reproduced to the centimeter. The drawing remained. The line that was drawn is extinct. The artist who drew it is dead. The group is gone. The language did not survive. We do not know a single word of it. The name did not remain. But the drawing is there. There it is. On the wall. In the darkness. Waiting for a torch to bring it to life again. That is all that remains of a specific person who lived 36,000 years ago and one day took charcoal and drew a line across stone. One line. That survived everything. That says across 36,000 years. I was here. I saw. I wanted this to remain. And it remained. It always remains. Not the body, not the name, not the words. Words disappear. Not the memories. They leave with those who remember. A line on stone remains. A drawing remains. What a human being makes out of the desire to say something to someone unknown remains. And the one who finds it, a year later or 36,000 years later, understands. Not everything. Perhaps almost nothing about the one who made it. But understands that someone was there. That someone looked at these animals and found them worthy of being preserved. That someone wanted them not to disappear. This is a conversation. Across 36,000 years, across all the time that lay between them and us. A conversation that continues. Right now.